Elise had spent years learning how to survive silence. After James died, the house no longer felt like a home. Every room carried traces of him, memories hidden in ordinary things like old coffee mugs, books left on shelves, and the faint scent of his cologne that somehow still lingered in the closet. At first she tried filling the emptiness with routines. She woke early each morning to water the flowers, cleaned rooms that were already spotless, and spent long evenings reading books she barely paid attention to. Staying busy felt easier than admitting how lonely she truly was. Over time, she convinced herself this was simply what life looked like, now quiet, predictable, and emotionally distant. Then Ethan came back into her life, and everything she had carefully buried began to surface again. He had moved into the house temporarily, planning to stay only until he figured out his next step. Elise assumed his presence would barely change anything, but she was wrong. Ethan carried a calm energy that slowly filled the empty spaces in the house. He repaired things without being asked, cooked dinner some nights, and joined her in the garden during quiet afternoons. Unlike James, who had always been loud and charismatic, Ethan was thoughtful and observant. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words carried a sincerity that made her feel unexpectedly understood. What unsettled Elise most wasn't simply that she enjoyed having him around, it was the way he looked at her sometimes, as if he truly saw her after years of feeling invisible. One morning, she stepped into the hallway wearing an old silk robe she hadn't touched in years. It had been a gift from James long ago, back when their marriage still felt alive. She assumed Ethan would still be asleep, but instead she found him standing near the kitchen with a mug in his hand. The moment his eyes landed on her, the atmosphere shifted. His gaze lingered longer than it should have, not disrespectful, but intense enough to send warmth rushing through her chest. Neither of them spoke immediately. Elise suddenly became painfully aware of the thin fabric against her skin and the way Ethan's eyes followed her movement. He finally greeted her quietly, but the tension between them remained long after she escaped into the kitchen. She tried convincing herself it meant nothing, yet she replayed that moment repeatedly throughout the day. After that morning, everything between them felt different. Their conversations became softer, heavier somehow. Small moments started lingering in ways they never had before. While working together in the garden, their hands brushed accidentally, and the brief contact sent a surprising rush through her body. Ethan noticed her reaction instantly but said nothing. Instead, he offered a small smile before returning to work. Elise hated how aware she had become of him. She noticed the roughness of his hands, the quiet confidence in his posture, the way his eyes softened whenever he looked at her too long. At dinner, their conversations stretched late into the evening, drifting toward personal subjects neither of them usually discussed. Ethan asked her if she was happy, if she ever felt lonely living in such a quiet house. Those questions unsettled her, because nobody had cared enough to ask in years. One rainy evening, they sat together in the living room while thunder echoed outside. Ethan lounged across the couch reading while Elise pretended to focus on her tea. Eventually, he admitted he didn't understand how she managed being alone for so long. Elise brushed the comment aside, insisting she had simply adapted, but Ethan shook his head gently. He told her she deserved more than empty rooms and endless silence. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She wasn't used to someone looking at her with that kind of tenderness anymore. Embarrassed by how deeply his words affected her, she stood abruptly and escaped into the kitchen, yet even there she could still hear his voice echoing in her mind. Over the following days, the tension between them only grew stronger. Every glance carried unspoken meaning. Every accidental touch lingered too long. Elise tried keeping her distance by distracting herself with chores, but Ethan's presence seemed impossible to avoid. One afternoon, she found him in the garage sorting through James's old tools. Dust floated through the sunlight as he carefully organized shelves that hadn't been touched in years. Watching him there filled her with an ache she couldn't explain. Eventually, Ethan asked if she missed James. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. When she admitted she missed him every single day, Ethan quietly confessed he missed him too. For a brief moment, grief connected them in a way that felt strangely intimate. Then Ethan looked at her and softly said, he believed James would have wanted her to be happy. The words struck her deeply because she realized she hadn't allowed herself to even think about happiness in years. That night while she washed dishes, Ethan appeared beside her in the kitchen. He leaned casually against the counter, watching her in silence before speaking her name softly. The way he said it made her heart race. He told her she didn't always have to carry everything alone. Something about those words broke through the walls she had spent years building around herself. She turned away quickly, pretending to focus on the dishes so he wouldn't notice her trembling hands. Sleep became impossible after that. Every night she lay awake replaying their conversations, their glances, the quiet moments that felt far too intimate to ignore. Eventually, one sleepless night, she wandered into the living room and found Ethan awake, reading beneath the dim light of a lamp. He invited her to sit with him, and after hesitating, she agreed. The silence between them felt charged with everything neither of them dared to say aloud. Elise admitted she had been thinking about James, and how empty the house felt without him. Ethan listened quietly before telling her the house didn't feel empty to him. Because she was there, his honesty stole the breath from her lungs. Then he crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. Gently taking her hand in his touch was warm and steady. He whispered her name softly before confessing he couldn't stop thinking about her. Panic and longing crashed together inside her chest. Elise insisted whatever existed between them was wrong and far too complicated. But the words sounded weak even to herself. Ethan simply asked her to tell him she felt nothing and he would leave her alone forever. She tried to say it, but she couldn't, because the truth was she did feel something. She felt it every time he looked at her. Slowly, her trembling hand lifted to his face, fingertips brushing his cheek. Ethan closed his eyes briefly at her touch. And when he looked at her again, the longing in his expression was impossible to ignore. The next day, Elise avoided him completely, terrified by how quickly things were changing between them. But by evening, Ethan finally confronted her in the study, where she pretended to reorganize books just to keep herself occupied. He stepped closer and quietly asked why she was running from him. Elise admitted she was scared because none of this was supposed to happen. Ethan answered gently that pretending their feelings didn't exist wouldn't make them disappear. He moved close enough that she could feel his warmth surrounding her. Then he whispered that if she truly wanted him gone, he would leave immediately. Elise stared into his eyes and realized she couldn't lie anymore. Her hand rested against his chest as she admitted she didn't know what to do. Ethan leaned forward until their foreheads touched, and told her softly she didn't need all the answers right now. She only needed to stop fighting what they both already knew. That night, rain poured heavily outside while they sat together on the couch in silence. Ethan eventually asked if she regretted letting him get close to her. Elise looked at him honestly and admitted she didn't. Relief softened his expression instantly. Slowly, he reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. When he kissed her, years of loneliness and hidden emotion finally broke free. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant and uncertain, but it quickly deepened into something impossible to resist. Ethan touched her with tenderness that made her feel cherished rather than simply desired. For the first time in years, Elise felt alive again. Later, lying together while the storm faded outside, Ethan held her close and promised they would figure everything out together, no matter how complicated things became. Elise rested quietly against his chest, overwhelmed by the realization that somewhere between grief and loneliness, she had unexpectedly found hope again.